Matthew 7:15-20. In the closing portion of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives a warning to his hearers. Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. These words were spoken within the context of Israel in the first century, during a time when the nation stood at a turning point in its covenant history. Prophets had long been part of Israel's story. From Moses onward, God raised up prophets to speak his word to the people. Yet, alongside the true prophets, Scripture repeatedly records the presence of false ones who misled the nation. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and others confronted prophets who spoke visions from their own hearts rather than from the Lord. Warning stands in continuity with that prophetic tradition. The audience hearing him on the mountain would have understood the danger immediately. False prophets were not distant or theoretical figures. They were active voices within Israel's religious life. They appeared outwardly righteous, clothed like sheep among the flock, but inwardly they devoured the people through deception. The imagery of sheep and wolves emphasizes disguise. The danger is not obvious hostility, but imitation. These figures present themselves as guides of God's people while opposing the message God has sent. Throughout the gospel narrative, this conflict becomes visible in the tension between Jesus and the religious leaders who claimed authority over Israel. While appearing outwardly devoted to the law and the traditions of the fathers, their teaching often obscured the very righteousness to which the law pointed. Jesus then introduces the metaphor of trees and fruit. In the scriptures, trees frequently symbolize people or communities. The fruit represents what naturally grows out of the nature of the tree itself. A healthy tree produces fruit consistent with its life, while a diseased tree yields fruit that reveals its corruption. The point is not that fruit creates the nature of the tree, but that fruit reveals it. A tree does not struggle to become what it already is. Its fruit simply manifests the life within it. Thus, Jesus directs his listeners to discern the source of a prophet's message by what flows from it. Within the historical setting of the first century, men competed for the allegiance of Israel. Some urged stricter devotion to the traditions of the elders. Others promised national deliverance through political zeal. Still others proclaimed peace and security while ignoring the coming judgment spoken of by the prophets. These teachings often burdened the people with systems of righteousness rooted in human effort and institutional authority. Against this backdrop, Jesus announced the arrival of God's kingdom and the fulfillment of the promises given to the fathers. His message revealed the righteousness of God as a gift rather than a human achievement. It unveiled the nearness of a covenant transformation long anticipated by the prophets. The fruit of false prophets, therefore, is seen in what their teaching produces. When the message leads people away from the truth God is revealing, when it binds them to systems that cannot give life, it exposes the nature of the tree from which it comes. The outward appearance of authority cannot conceal the inner reality forever. The fruit eventually makes the tree known. Jesus continues by describing the inevitable fate of trees that do not bear good fruit. Such trees are cut down and thrown into the fire. This language echoes the warnings given earlier by John the Baptizer, who announced that the axe was already laid at the root of the trees. Both figures spoke to a generation standing on the threshold of covenant judgment, a moment when God would remove what was unfruitful and establish what fulfilled his purposes. Within Israel's history, judgment and renewal often appeared together. When God judged unfaithful leadership or corrupt systems, he simultaneously preserved and established what aligned with his promise. The imagery of cutting down trees therefore reflects the removal of what could not produce the fruit God desired. Jesus concludes with the repeated statement, "By their fruits you will know them." The repetition emphasizes certainty. The true character of a message, a teacher, or a prophetic voice cannot remain hidden indefinitely. What grows from it, its fruit, reveals its origin. In the unfolding story of the gospel, the contrast between two kinds of trees becomes increasingly clear. One represents systems rooted in human righteousness and external conformity. The other reflects the life that comes from God's promise fulfilled through his Son. One produces fruit born of striving and burden. The other reveals the fruit that grows from a life given by divine grace. Thus, the warning against false prophets stands as part of Jesus' larger proclamation concerning the transition taking place in his generation. As the old order approached its conclusion and the promised reality of God's kingdom emerged, the distinction between what was genuine and what was deceptive would become unmistakable. And so Jesus leaves his listeners with a principle grounded in the nature of life itself. Trees are known by their fruit. The visible outcome reveals the unseen source, and what grows from the tree declares what the tree truly is.